Hey, you're back here today with Graham and Bobby on The Current. This is our 16th episode. It's good to be here with you, Graham. What's going on?
Nice. Not a lot, man. Just continuing to bask in the all of the things that are happening in Bitcoin. But yeah, it's crazy. It's 16th episode already. I hadn't even realized that, but that's cool to see.
Yeah, they are adding up. These are always fun to do. We've got some great topics this week. A few technical things and some questions, some open questions for Graham. We're going to pick his mind and get his opinion on some things in the state of Bitcoin. But we'll go ahead and dive in. What I have first here for us is some Ethereum talk. So we got a post from Grubbles here. I don't keep up with Ethereum too close, but apparently they're talking about changing the monetary supply again. While we're building layer twos, layer threes, and side chains, Ethereum's changing their core monetary supply. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm similar to you. I don't really follow a lot of what's happening inside of the Ethereum space, but it does. I mean, it feels like one of those things where it's just like they're just kind of throwing everything at the wall to see what can work and what can make like a sustainable project. Which is, it's just, it's really, it seems just so odd of like these decentralized protocols and like what is supposed to be this, decentralized money or application or whatever it is you want to call like Ethereum, but like to be changing like some of the most core things about the protocol like over and over and over again. It's just like this, it just doesn't make any bit of sense to me. So I just don't understand the angle either. Like what is even the reasons for them doing it?
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot. Building the plane while it's flying is never good, but
Yeah, I mean it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think that I feel like the Solana versus Ethereum like battle is like that's the hot battle for those people that are in that space more so than like Bitcoin versus Ethereum, which was the previous big battle. Now it's kind of like more infighting inside of those kinds of different areas. So it'll be interesting to see kind of where this goes, and what ultimately happens. But I think it's kind of like I think with things like this, they're separating themselves more so from Bitcoin than they have previously. Where I think they're in the ways that they talk, they're trying to associate themselves more so with Bitcoin. But in these kinds of things, it's like very clearly obvious that the entire protocol is just entirely different than anything on top of Bitcoin.
yeah, yeah. So they're going from ultrasound money to ultra sound money.
Yeah.
Maybe, who knows? But yeah. So Ethereum's always moving, doing something new. But as far as what's going on Bitcoin and Lightning, an announcement this week. I know ARC was brought up and shared. Maybe a year ago, maybe less, but there's already an announced V2. It sounds like some updates made, even though it's not functioning and running just yet, from what I understand. But could you kind of share how you're viewing ARC and like what this means for Bitcoin builders and users of Bitcoin?
Yeah, definitely. We covered last week. We covered Arc Labs, which I think was just released like last week. So this is more protocol level changes, and it seems like from reading this, it's more around kind of like revocation of like how basically how AASPs operate. So I think it's a fairly technical change inside of the protocol. Where in the V1, I guess the ASPs had a pretty high requirement for liquidity of basically you need to, from what I understand, you would need like the same amount of money as everyone that is inside of like the inside of the pool or whatever it is that they call it. And so this I think is an enhancement that lets the ASP operators have a little bit more, have less strict requirements on top of liquidity, or have them giving them the ability to kind of like exit or remove liquidity much easier than was in the V1. So I tried to read through it and kind of understand exactly all the different things, but I don't think I quite understand ARC well enough to know exactly what's happening here. But I know the impetus here is the protocol itself is for the most part unchanged. The thing that is the most changed thing inside of this V2 is the ways that the ASPs operate and their liquidity requirements inside of kind of their operations. And it gets actually, if you scroll down to the bottom, what was finding what was very interesting is that there's this chart kind of basically they're adding they're using kind of the taproot trees and leaves to do more, basically add more opportunities for kind of different kind of scenarios, I guess is maybe a simple way to put it. I hope that's a correct way to put it. But as they increase this complexity, it kind of vastly changes the dynamic, it seems like, for ASPs, which is, so ASP, you can think of ASP as sort of like an LSP inside of Lightning, where it's like a liquidity provider, kind of a coordinator. In Arc, it's pretty different, where there it's kind of like a central coordinator that does all that facilitates the transactions amongst all of the users of the pool or whatever. With this change, it drastically increases the amount of like kind of computations that need to be done for an ASP. So it really, I would say it enhances the requirements for an ASP and what their like literal kind of hardware, CPU, all that is for them. So I think that changes it fairly drastically, and the requirements for an ASP to actually operate went from maybe fairly simple to a little bit more complex. I mean, maybe they can argue it's still fairly simple, but the kind of compute requirements on it seem pretty high, which is an interesting dynamic to see again how it plays out, because all in all, this is all sort of hypothetical. Like, this isn't actually usable protocol today, so it'll be interesting to see how it all kind of plays out as they actually develop usable software.
Yeah. Okay. Copy that. Good to know. Well, good deal. Well, moving along here, the Lightning Invoice Decoder by Amboss. They gave a bunch of examples down here for readers to kind of dive into, but tell us a little bit about what this is and what value this brings for node runners.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't. I would say this is a drastically new thing. There's been several Lightning decoders before, but this is basically something you could post in like a Lightning invoice, address, LNURL, any of those things that they kind of mentioned there. And then it'll like decode it, so it'll kind of give you all the information that's inside. Like, a Lightning invoice is a bunch of garbled text. You can paste one in there, see what the output is, and then it'll kind of tell you, okay, what is this amount? What is the amount of the invoice? Who is it going to, route hints, any of those kinds of things inside of it. So it's just another nice tool to be able to have, and amongst kind of the tool chain of different things that people that are developing or building on Lightning need. So this is nice. And I think in their thread, they talked about some of other things of like Aqua Wallet and how they do invoices and stuff. I think I'd have to dig in further that, but I think that basically, I think they're showcasing there's people use invoices in a lot of different ways, where it's not always a straightforward, invoice goes to the destination. There's, some more things you can do on top of that to make it a unique experience. And so I think with their invoice decoder, you can do a little bit more deep diving into kind of how some of those things work, which I think will be interesting to see as we see more unique kind of people using different, invoices, route hints, all of those kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool. For those who maybe didn't see the thread, when you go into the comments, they break down all kinds of different invoices, from Cash App to Moon Wallet to Fedi, Aqua Bitcoin, like Graham mentioned, and many others. So yeah, this is cool. It'll be interesting to see what folks can do with it. This was, I think, making a lot of rounds and headlines yesterday, but Apple announced they're going to have like a tap to pay feature. Obviously, it's using, I believe, an NFC chip, and we've been using those with, I think CoinKite products and like Sats cards, and having standard Lightning payments like we're seeing here. But groundbreaking, or is it kind of like a backtrack from like what's been available for a long time?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so I guess the tap to pay feature in like Apple's the new iOS 18. I mean, I think it's nothing super new. I think that we've had kind of the tap functionality for a while. Maybe there's some stuff in it that makes it cool or whatever. What I think is really cool about this is that Evan from Zeus Wallet, I guess he got the developer version of iOS 18 and already enabled the tap to pay functionality inside of Zeus, which I think is like actually super badass. Like, because when you think about paying a friend at like a conference or anything like that, it's usually, hey, you generate the QR code, you scan it with the other device. I think the tap functionality is like actually way better in that kind of UX of like paying people that you're, right beside, or even checkouts and things like that. I think the tap to pay experience is way better than scanning QR codes or even inserting your card in the fiat terms, all those things. So I am excited for that reason. I thought tap functionality inside of Lightning would be super badass. So I'm actually really excited to see that Evan already got it working for the Zeus app. So I'm really excited to actually, that's probably going to be the one, like, of all the reasons to get like iOS 18, this is probably like the one where I'm going to like get on it like sooner than later, because I certainly want that functionality.
Yeah. Yeah. I know folks give Apple a hard time for, being closed source operating system, but them extending those features to builders is great. And it's cool to see him moving with it that fast. And yeah, that's way easier than a QR code. So very cool. I love it.
Yeah.
And then Zeus also, to kind of dive in a bit more, they have some new bounties. Looks like Sats card and Core Lightning, but anything you want to share, like pass along on these that made these mentionable today?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was worth calling him out, especially as we were looking at Zeus. And I think that that's something that we get asked about a decent amount. Is kind of like, what are ways that you can get involved in Bitcoin, or maybe you don't have necessarily a full-time job in like the Bitcoin space, but you want to contribute. And I think that this is a great example of Zeus having specific bounties. There's a lot of other companies that have bounties across kind of different websites, but these are things that are basically, things that the Zeus team is asking to get done and is willing to pay you for it too. So this is cool to see, actually, bounties being put up for adding this functionality into the application. I think that there's other bounties out there as well that aren't strictly technical or writing code. So want to shout it out for one, awareness of anyone that is looking at doing, getting their hands dirty in some different aspects of Bitcoin tech. This is a great opportunity, and a great opportunity for you to get paid for it as well. And then similarly, as people are looking for things to do in the space, this is basically how I got started in the Bitcoin space. I wouldn't say there's a lot of bounties necessarily, but it was just like finding issues on GitHub and just like contributing and just like playing around with the technology. So it's the best way of getting started, in my opinion, is starting to work on stuff like this. So wanted to shout out some of these bounties where you can play around, but you can also get paid for it, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a good point. There's always a lot of interest, and I probably get one message a month on LinkedIn. Folks are saying, "How can I get started working in Bitcoin or showcasing value from a technical side, seeking out issues yourself and solving them like you did, or finding these bounties, or if you're non-technical, creating content, educating, building a story or a narrative or an arc for yourself online so that you can express your knowledge of Bitcoin or what value you can bring to the table." So I like that. This is a good call out for Zeus. So moving along here to wrap up the stream today, I had 4 questions I wanted to run by you to get your feedback and some of your thoughts we could share with the audience. But as far as Bitcoin challenges over the next 5 years, what do you just see in your view of maybe being some of the biggest hurdles or challenges that the industry is going to face broadly as it relates to growth and adoption?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a couple things. I mean, I think like the easy softball is all of the regulation stuff. I think that is something that I think it's something that needs to be dealt with, but I have high confidence that it will be dealt with one way or the other. And so I think that just I think that everyone feels like they're operating in a gray area from a company standpoint. So I think that enabling kind of clear paths forward in that, I think, will be a big deal. But that's kind of, I feel like that's the easy answer given, everything that's kind of happened over the last like 2 months. I think further beyond that, I think that there's like Bitcoin has been, it's kind of ebbed and flowed in terms of kind of how we scale and how we actually enable a lot more types of use cases and experiences on top of Bitcoin. And I think I see it as there's a lot of opportunity there, but it's also a hurdle in that we have 20 different ways of kind of scaling Bitcoin and kind of incorporating those together. It's something that the industry will have to kind of figure out, and how do we kind of reconcile these different things and get into a spot where it's much more usable for the end consumer. Because right now we have Fedimint, we have Lightning, we have just eCash, the cashew kind of style eCash. We have like BitVM, we have all these different things, but ultimately an end user is not going to care about any of those things. They just want to be able to use a system that's easy. And so we're going to have to, I think, eventually have some more opinions about which one is correct and push in that direction, and then build experiences on top of that, because that's the only way that people are going to, the way that Bitcoin kind of proliferates and really explodes is if people don't even know that they're using it. And it's more of a, it's kind of behind the scenes, or it's so good that it is not this kind of thing that you have to do because you philosophically believe in Bitcoin. You're using it because it is truly a better experience. And so that's what we need to do as an industry. And I think there's a lot of the technology is obviously the thing that's got to get solved first, so we can build these things in the appropriate way on top. But we need to kind of come to consensus soon around, what are the best ways of actually doing that?
Yeah, that is a good point. There's so much folks are building on, and which one's going to be the de facto go-to that can be presented to consumers in a way where it delights them. And like you said, they don't maybe know they're using it; they just get to have that incredible experience. So as far as the Lightning Network playing a role with all the new layer twos, where do you see Lightning? Is it getting replaced? Is it going to be critical to how these new layer two functions? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is actually something we get asked about quite a bit too. No, I mean, I think that the way I see it, in a way that I've talked with a lot of other people in the space, is I think that Lightning is going to be the interconnectivity bit between all of it. Like, when you think about being able to pay from like Cashew to like a Fediment, that's usually over Lightning. That's usually making a Lightning payment from one federation to another, or another, mint to another. Same thing with the way that I see like BitVM working, or any of those things is, whenever you want to go in between different like layers or protocols on top of Bitcoin, or even going from like just holding sats to, some kind of like EVM compatible like sidechain thing, it's usually done via Lightning. And so that's the way that I see it being done. I think that a lot of the things being built on top of BitVM specifically are not necessarily made for scaling necessarily. It's more about new functionality. And so when you think about that new functionality, you need the kind of scaling technology on top, right alongside it. And so that's what I see Lightning as. So I think it's very, very connected into all of the different things that exist that are being built. So I think that it's going to be the connector between everything.
Cool. All right. One final question for you. Are you bullish on Bitcoin being at the center of political debates from what it seems lately? What do you think that means for Bitcoin at this stage of its maturity?
I mean, I think it's good. I think it's a good thing. And I think that the reason why it's a popular topic for politicians right now is like, it's obviously that people have a thoughts and opinions about it. They wouldn't be discussing this if people didn't care about Bitcoin and just crypto in general. So that is a proof point in itself that it has become like kind of this election topic, which is kind of weird. I didn't think that it would be that this year or this election cycle. So it validates that people actually care about this enough for it to be a political topic. And then two, I think it's really good because, like I said, kind of in the first answer, we need a lot of work inside of the regulatory frameworks and all of those things to kind of make it more normalized and more straightforward. And so I think the fact that it has become this kind of political issue will hopefully get us there. I mean, there's also a path forward where it doesn't get us there and it just creates more kind of chaos. I am hopeful that we will be able to use this in a way that actually directs us into actual, useful conversations and dialogue. So I think for those reasons, it validates it and it kind of pushes us in a way that actually gets us into a method where we have more clear kind of guidance and all of those kinds of things. So I think overall it's a net good.
Yeah, I've heard people joke both sides, like we have too many Bitcoin podcasts, or we don't have enough of them. But I feel at this stage, there's so many good books out there. There are a lot of good podcasts, and there's a lot of people who are articulating Bitcoin's value prop across any sector. There's the payments folks, the mining folks, there's the developers, there's just the advocates and those who like use it and tell the story of like the global community. I feel like we're in a pretty good position where when it comes down to having a critical conversation politically, it'll be respected, what's needed from an open source side. And in some angles, it feels like we're winning, but it doesn't mean let off the gas. But it's good that it's getting attention. And it seems like it's getting like the honor and respect it deserves, but we'll see.
Yep. No, I totally agree. And I think that, it'll be interesting to see how it all kind of plays out. And it's actually, it's going to play out sooner than later. The election's in November. It's like, this isn't kind of like a 2-year long thing. It's like, it's going to be here before we know it from the election standpoint. Obviously, none of this stuff is final, in any point in time, but it'll be really interesting to see what kind of shakes out from it.
Yeah. Well, good deal. Well, it's great to be back. We'll see you guys next week, same time. If you have any topics you'd like to have covered, feel free to shoot them over to us, and we'll see y'all next time. Thank you, Graham. Talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.